Should the negotiator and lister role be combined? My name is Chris Watkin. Today I'm joined by Jayne Twiddle, who is a self-employed estate agent from the beautiful city of York. Jayne used to be the National Operations Director of Hunters and set up her own estate agency with the TAUK group in late spring 2024. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks very much, Chris.
Right, the personal agent is what this is called, where the negotiator does the valuer role and even negotiates the offer and even does the vendor management, because obviously you're a self-employed agent. Why do you believe that is the future of estate agency in the UK? Talk to me.
I just think it gives the client exactly what they need. Most clients I speak to, when I found out what they actually want, they want a service that takes them from A to Z, not A to B. They want that person that they speak to first of all, and they've offloaded everything they need of their, I suppose, what their goals are. When they've explained that to that person, they want that person to be able to know those goals and work with them throughout that process, not seeing them, then seeing someone else, then seeing someone else.
I mean, this started off mainly when the corporates bought the estate agents in the late 1970s, early 1980s, and the role of the negotiator and the valuer was split. Surely it makes better financial sense and business sense to split those roles up.
Yes, and in some ways, if you're looking at, if you're only doing transactions, if you're only concentrating on transaction numbers, which I think is a bygone era actually, rather than a client-focused era, which we're into now, I believe, then that model works.
I mean, what do you think the biggest problems are? I mean, is it a lack of accountability or is it something else?
I think a lack of accountability is absolutely key here, because what happens is, if you've got a valuer going out and can, for example, you talk a lot about overvaluing and things like that. If you've got a valuer that goes out and he can put whatever price he wants on to tick his target to say, I've listed that property. And then the neg is then responsible for trying to sell that property and trying to get the price down. You've got a problem, because the valuer's already given that seller an absolute golden egg, really, that's never going to come to fruition.
I mean, I've got some stats here, Jayne. In terms of the whole national picture in the last 2 years, 54.5% of properties that have come onto the market that have left estate agents' books exchange contracts. So in essence, the agent got paid and the homeowner moved. Okay. In the top 50 estate agents by size, that number reduces down to 52.7%. But when I looked at the self-employed models and some of the franchises, that number rose to 59.5%. So that's quite a huge difference, isn't it?
It's a massive difference. And I think some of that boils down to, if it's me as a personal agent selling your property, Chris, it's the money that's going into my pocket immediately. It really means something to me, not just for reputation. It means I want to be able to face that client all the way through the journey and have said, I'm doing my best. I'm going to problem solve for you. I'm going to find a resolution to this to get us to sold. Whereas in the traditional model, where you've lost the valuer, now you're with the neg. I'm not saying that neg does not want to sell the property, because they'll have targets to meet, but I don't believe it's the same need as it is on a personal agency business, whereby it means so much. It puts food on the table, actually, doesn't it?
I mean, you used to be, as I said, National Operations Director for Hunters.
Yep.
So you are dealing with franchisees. And I'm assuming some of the franchisees who were smaller were obviously doing the whole job front. But then there would have been larger franchisees who did employ valuers and did employ negotiators. Did you, without mentioning numbers, but did you actually see a difference between the numbers in terms of listings to exchanges between the two?
Yes. Yeah, I think you can see that, absolutely. I think, again, without giving out numbers, I think we had some agents that started off as personal agents, actually, at Hunters. Well, that'll be 20 odd years ago now, and they moved into branches. Now, those particular agents actually really saw the value of them being the face of that business and really, really, truly wanted to know what the client's needs were. I think once you start getting the business that grows, the danger is you come to a point where probably that person, I don't know, is doing 30 exchanges a year. They need to take somebody else on to be able to do the work, and actually passing that ethos on to someone else becomes an issue. And that dilutes and dilutes and dilutes until the point where you get, it becomes, I suppose, it just becomes a broken system sometimes, whereby you are not client focused, you are transaction focused. And the cost of those agencies to run nowadays are really, really high. So you have to be transaction focused.
And that's really what it comes down to is are we a transactional estate agent or a relationship-based estate agent?
Definitely. And I think that's the difference between a personal agent and a traditional model agency. And I think, as we'll see, well, we're seeing numbers growing all the time, but as we see in the next few years, I think we are going to see more of a relationship-based agency. And I think that's come on leaps and bounds over COVID.
You're part of a self-employed model. I mean, what is particularly interesting is that the UMove, which pride themselves on the personal agent basis,
Yep.
win all the awards for service, and their stats in terms of what they list versus what they sell versus what they exchange, and how close to get to the asking price. And it includes EXP as well. And I haven't looked at your guys' figures at the TAUK, but the other firms I've mentioned, all the numbers are much higher. So is this the slow death of corporate estate agency?
I believe so. I believe so. I think we're seeing a real shift in change. I mean, you could say, and I've heard it said, this is, the American brand, the Australian way of doing it, coming over to England. And we've tried, as I say, Hunters tried it 20 odd years ago, doing personal agency. It's been around for a long time, but I actually think it's taken a shift in a customer idea of what they want. So it's the customers that are driving this more so than the estate agency side. I believe it's what the customer wants more and more.
Therefore, there has to be a responsibility through the self-employed models and the franchise models to get that story across. Because if you don't mind me saying, and this is not pointed at you,
No.
but I'm talking sweeping statements here, is that, do you think they're getting that story across well enough?
I think it is a main story at the agency UK, but I think there's a way to go actually, because I do believe that when I look around, when I moved from Hunters and set up on my own, I looked at lots of different offerings because there are an awful lot of self-employed models around. And for me, I went to TAUK because of the fact that it was customer focused and it was niche, as in keeping your niche area and working with those customers, and really becoming, I suppose they used to call it the mayor of that area. Was that something? Yeah, so working that area to make sure that you're the person who knows, and that rather than trying to grow yourself too big, working there and effectively making yourself really valuable to that customer base.
And what would your message be to any boss of an estate agency firm that says, well, she's only selling 4 or 5 houses a month?
Well, I'd say that's great. I'm doing a great job. I can charge what I want to be able to do that. But also, I want to look at the profit at the end of it. I know the profit that when I was working at Hunters sometimes,
you're probably making more money than...
Well, when you start taking in office costs, salary costs, all the costs that come on board for running an office, what's left at the end, I know a lot of franchisees that earned far less than the negotiators. Some of them were probably earning less than the viewers. at the end of the day by the time you've paid everything out, whereas I am able to keep what I earn.
Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Let us know in the comments whether you agree or disagree with what Jayne and myself have said. Thank you for your time today.